Hi there, and welcome to Destiny Awaits, the podcast where we explore faith, identity, and purpose so you can step boldly into the life designed for you. I am your host, Andrea John, and here we keep it real. Authentic conversations, biblical insights, and stories of transformations that meet you right where you are. Each week, we uncover the truths that empower you to overcome limitations, embrace who God says you are, and live in alignment with His calling. Because your identity isn't about perfection, it's about wholeness, growth, and walking hand in hand with the one who created you. We are currently in a series called Jesus Speaks, where we dive deep into the Sermon on the Mount. This is not just a collection of teachings, it's an invitation to live a life that reflects who we truly are. In it, Jesus reveals how we uncover identity, discover our purpose, and step boldly into the destiny He's prepared for us. These words are transformative. They challenge us to examine our hearts, reshape our thinking, and align our lives with God's kingdom. And my prayer is that as we journey through this teaching together, you'll feel equipped, encouraged, and empowered to let your light shine. Let's dive in. Hey there, and welcome to the Destiny Awaits podcast. I am your host, Andrea John, and I am with
Michael.
And we are here today continuing the Jesus Speaks series on the Sermon on the Mount. And it has been very convicting, but a lot of good lessons learned.
That's right.
So we are moving on. So we are looking at what Jesus meant by how He's fulfilling the law and what that means, because He will bring in and usher in a new covenant, and He's explaining God's heart to us through different stories and lessons. Last week we talked about murder and how you don't actually need to kill someone to kill someone.
Yep.
In a way, like another way to say it. This week we are going to talk about sex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about lust and sex, adultery, divorce, all these hot topics. So get cozy because it's going to get a little uncomfortable around here. Let's take a sip of coffee. All right, hunker down. So why don't we start with you reading? So
Okay.
You're reading from the NET.
Correct. So starting in 5, verse 37, let your word be yes, and your no, no. Wait a minute, that
No.
can't be right.
27.
Yeah, we're in the wrong spot here. Okay, here we go. Sorry. 5:27. I was on 37. Apologies. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to desire her has already committed adultery in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than to have your whole body thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away.
It's
It is
disposable.
better to lose one of your members than to have the whole body go into hell. 31, it says, it was good, it was said, whoever divorces his wife must give her legal document. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except for immorality makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery.
Okay, so I'll read out of the Message. You know the next commandment pretty well, too. Don't go to bed with another's spouse. But don't think you've preserved your virtue simply by staying out of bed. Your heart can be corrupted by lust even quicker than your body. Those ogling looks you think nobody notices, they also corrupt. Let's not pretend this is easier than it really is. If you want to live a morally pure life, here's what you have to do. You have to blind your right eye the moment you catch it in a lustful leer. You have to choose to live one-eyed or else be dumped on a moral trash pile. And you have to chop off your right hand the moment you notice it raised threateningly. Better a bloody stump then your entire being discarded for good in the dump. Remember the scripture that says, whoever divorces his wife, let him do it legally, giving her divorce papers and her legal rights. Too many of you are using that as a cover for selfishness and whim, pretending to be righteous just because you are legal. Please, no more pretending. If you divorce your wife, you're responsible for making her an adulteress, unless she has already made herself one by sexual promiscuity. And if you marry such a divorced adulteress, you're automatically an adulterer yourself. You can't use legal cover to mask a moral failure. I really like this translation for this passage.
Not bad.
I think it explains things a little bit that I think it gets to the heart of the matter.
So let's start with 27. It says, you have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to desire her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So, first of all, you have to understand that in the Jewish world, and even to this day, I've talked to a lot of rabbinical Jews, and there may be some that say I'm wrong about this, but this is what they've told me, that when it comes to lusting after women, as long as they don't physically have sex with them, it is totally okay.
Right.
In their world. Obviously, and there's no way around it, Jesus says that's not the case.
Correct.
But just like the murder thing, what he's really saying here is if you never started lusting after the woman to begin with, you never would have ended up having sex with her.
Right.
So this is again about the seed of desire. It's about adjusting your heart to not want to stop lusting after and seeing other women a certain way that ultimately leads to the point of sex. Unless it is your wife, then it's okay to do that.
Well, and that's something let's discuss, because lust,
no laughs, whatever.
Lust
See, this
is a
why I have
word.
to speak in front of an audience, because I could have gotten a laugh there.
I'll laugh for you.
Well, there you go.
Now I made myself laugh. Okay. We have to look at the word lust and how Jesus is using it here. Because in today's culture, we use the word lust simply to define a love from a sexual standpoint. But what Jesus is saying here has nothing to do with love. Love is not in this equation at all. Lust, described here, is loveless. It is devaluing. Again, last week we talked about words and how they can devalue a human. And here it's the same thing. Jesus isn't saying if you just notice a woman, if you've noticed her, if she's just passed by. He's not saying you can't look at her. He's saying don't stare at her like you want to eat her up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what Jesus is saying.
Right.
Don't devalue her as a human being. Don't sexualize her.
Right, because it would be impossible for, I'm just me personally, it would be impossible for me to look at a woman and not be able to tell if she's pretty or not.
Correct.
That'd
and same thing
impossible.
And listen, there are people who are going to pretend like they don't see. Okay? Now, I'm the type of person...
You're either lying or blind.
You're lying.
Yeah.
That's my stand on it. Okay? Again, I don't know people's hearts, but what I will say is this. Even for females, you notice when there's a handsome gentleman, okay? Pretty is pretty, okay? Beautiful is beautiful. There's no reason to deny it. What causes... To me, I'd be more worried if someone looks at a handsome guy and says, oh no, he's ugly. That tells me, you're up to something. Okay? Because...
Yeah, you're not being truthful.
You're not being truthful. And when you're not being truthful, it's... Okay, so we're going to get it. We saw the passage...
So you said this has nothing to do with lust. What do you mean by that? This has nothing to do
with love.
With love. Tell me what you mean by that again.
What I mean is, in today's context, people have different words for love, let's say. So there's agape love, there's eros love.
Right.
And eros love, they translate into lustful love, right? It's a sexual love. But here, Jesus isn't talking about love. He's talking about the opposite. You are devaluing a human being. Mm-hmm. You are ogling her. What did this translation say? It said, your heart can be, those ogling looks you think nobody notices, they also corrupt. When you look, like, men and women are different in this way. So you can totally correct me if I'm misspeaking. But, like, there's a difference between appreciating a pretty lady and looking at her and being like, I want to get some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is where the adultery begins. You never just, listen, this whole thing of,
I think that
it just happened. No, it never just happens. I am sorry.
I agree. And I think that women have a unique ability to appreciate a beautiful man or a beautiful woman without lusting at a much better level than men. Men blur that line all the time.
Right.
But a part of that is because of how they've been programmed to think.
Correct.
So if you're raised in like a very religious environment where you know, everyone, you know, wears turtlenecks and you know, everyone looks a certain way and you don't, you know, if you've been, depends on the environment you've been raised in. And that's going to affect how you interact and how you see women.
Very true.
And, you know, if you've been raised with the idea that sex is dirty and evil, then you will think about sex and women and nudity and all that kind of stuff very different, right? If you're taught that sex is sacred and something to be revered and only to be done in relationship, then you're going to have a much different view.
Right.
And even the way you view women, lust versus just recognizing someone's beautiful, it's going to be a big difference in your heart and in your mind and even in your spirit. And so men have to, but I think what Jesus is getting into here possibly is he's saying, hey, you know, the reason why you eventually had sex, like you said, is the reason why it went to adultery is because it started with a lust.
Right.
Coveting, wanting something that your neighbor had, right?
Now, there are situations where someone, let's say this person just met them and they went and they did something. Maybe they got drunk or whatever the case is, right? Often, like, it was just a mistake. It was, you know, the reality is that the only reason you were in that situation is because before that, you had already imagined being in a position where you would have committed adultery. You would have had sex with another woman.
Right.
Whether it's in your mind, whether it's through pornography, whether it's through whatever. But if you never had entertained that in your mind, you would never be in the position to, it just happened.
Right.
It never just happened.
No.
You have thought about it. You have planned it. You have imagined it. And that's what I think Jesus is saying here. Jesus is talking about you're imagining it. You're taking the time to think on it. You're pondering and you're sexualizing this woman. And she's more than that. So it's not only about let's say you're married, and it's not only about you disrespecting your wife. You're also disrespecting the person that you're lusting after.
Oh, yeah,
because
definitely.
You're sexualizing her. Mm-hmm. She isn't, listen, this is something I'm so passionate about. Women are not just bodies to have sex with. Right. Women are not just pretty things to look at. Women are so much more. Women are also made in the image and likeness of God. So to defile her is defiling the temple of God. And I don't think that people see it that way, because intentionally or unintentionally, women are still very disrespected. And I will say more so in the church realm, because I work I work in corporate world, and I receive more disrespect as a woman. I experience more misogyny within the church than at my job. As a matter of fact, at work, I am highly respected and regarded. And in the church, sometimes I have to ask you to say things for me, because people will listen to you more than they'll listen to me. So I'll just say, hey, can you say it? Can you announce it? Can you tell people?
That's just because they're afraid of me.
But because you're a man, why are they not afraid of me?
Because I'm scary.
I'm like Michael Scott. I want people to fear how much they love me.
Because I look angry half the time, even if I'm not.
No, but that's not why. It's because, like, we've heard
No,
people,
I agree. It is because you're a woman.
It's because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And we've had people, I love to teach the Bible. I teach the Bible. I'm a specific type of teacher, and you teach the Bible a different way, and you have your specialty and I have mine. But there are people who have said, like, when you teach, it's like, wow, and all this stuff, right? And I'm kind of disregarded, and it's even by women, and it's because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And what God is saying here is, like, don't disrespect a female. Don't disrespect a woman by ogling her, by lusting after her. Stop it. You can appreciate her, but she's more than someone for you to have sex with.
Yeah.
There's more to her. I have to say that until I met you, you were the first person, and I was just telling someone this weekend, because she was telling me how much of a nice guy you are and stuff. And I was like, well, to be honest, if it wasn't for Mike, I probably wouldn't be married today. I don't think I would have gotten married. And I said, because...
Again.
Huh? I wouldn't have gotten married again, yeah. Because my first experience was so bad. But also I had a lot of male friends. And right. I clearly had very... I guess I didn't have the best of male friends, because one of the things that attracted me the most to you, and I think why I felt so comfortable with you even when we were just friends, was I never felt like an object to you.
Yeah.
I don't know, you may have thought of me that way, I don't know, but you didn't make me feel that way. Like, I actually felt like a real person around you. And you always made me feel more than that. And I had never experienced that my entire life. I can say now, looking back and even speaking with people who were part of the church culture I was part of, including recently, I can say now without a doubt that I was sexualized by males and females my entire life. And I was judged for it.
Yeah.
Girls hated me and boys sexualized me because of the way I looked. It's very dehumanizing. And it really is a blow to, like, some people think you should be flattered by that. It doesn't flatter me at all in the slightest.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think that when it came to our relationship, I think part of the reason why you probably felt that is because my goal wasn't to have sex with you. I hate to say it like that, but it really wasn't.
Why do you hate to say it like that? That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's kind of insulting, but
it's not actually. I personally don't. Like, I don't know. Some girls may want to hear that. I just don't.
I mean, my goal was to have a relationship with you, but you're the one who threw yourself at me. So why are you laughing like that?
Because you're the one who kissed me first. You put your arm around me.
You sat next to me first.
I sat next to you when?
On the couch, I remember.
You were. Where was I supposed to sit?
Where was my hand supposed to go? You sat right next to me.
Tanya, clarify this, please.
She wasn't there.
Yes, she was. We were at her house.
Okay. Oh, that's true. I was actually referring to a time before that. But yeah, so I think you were feeling that intentionality. I have a lot more to say about that, but I won't.
Well, I'll keep it between me and you.
I had a long-term plan, and I didn't care how long it took. I knew you were the type of person I wanted to be with, and the person I wanted to be with. I said it the first moment I met you. I told someone that, and I was like, "This is who I want to be with." And yeah, I got off track and ended up in.
You got way off track.
Ended up in different relationships and stuff like that.
Way off track.
But in the back of my mind, like I knew this was the direction I wanted to go. But I didn't think you would ever do it.
Well, and I think we were friends. You knew what I had gone through, and I think you knew that I was not in a place for that at all.
No.
And I think that's probably something I was feeling from you too, like the level of respect where you were like, I understand, you weren't pushy, you just were there. You were just there, and I kept trying to friend zone you as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and we'll just leave that at that.
But that's another good example. If I see a lot of single men today. They're out there chasing women, going about it the wrong way.
Right.
Trying to, oogling everything that they can get their hands on, talking to everybody, trying to flirt and all this stuff. And really, if that is your mentality as a man, I will just give you some advice for all you single men. If that's your mentality and you see women as objects and you chase them in that same way, you will end up with the wrong woman.
Yes.
Because women who are good with that, who are okay with that and want to be objectified, are the same women that have massive issues that you actually don't want to be with or need to grow up a little bit. They say most women from about 18 to 30 have that problem where they enjoy that. A lot of women do. But once they get over 30 years old, everything changes. They start to realize that they don't want to be with that type of man. Mm-hmm. They want to be with a man that values them.
Well, you want security.
Treats them well.
Yes, you want security. And in my experience, women who rely heavily on their exterior to attract a man, that comes from a deep place of insecurity. Mm-hmm. And also what happens psychologically, think about it. If you worked really hard to secure a man, and I'm going to make this sound transactional intentionally, if you secured a man by your outward appearance, like you knew that's what you were doing, you knew that's how you attracted him, that's how you hooked him, that's how you got him, then that means that that's the only way to maintain him.
Yeah.
And even if that's not true, let's say that on the man side, that's not true. In your head, psychologically, it is true because you're going to think that's how I hooked him. That's how I have to keep him. And if I don't, then I'm in trouble. And if you are with a man who you obtained through that, one day when you're pregnant, when you have children, when your looks change, he's going to go look somewhere else because what you hooked him with is now different. He's going to throw you back into that sea and go find someone else.
Yeah, and I think we should also talk about the kind of the opposite of that, where you grow up in a Pentecostal or a very strict religious evangelical world, and you're constantly being hammered into you that you're not allowed to look at a woman.
Right.
That's like, oh, you looked on her, you looked at her wrong, you're committing adultery. Mm-hmm. And they use these scriptures
right
to they just hammer everybody with this mm-hmm. to the point where everyone's afraid.
Right.
They're so afraid to even look.
Right.
Or to even have normal conversation.
You can't compliment. You can't say anything.
Nothing.
You can't hug. There's rules to hugging. There's rules to touching. There should be. And then there's the reverse where it's, well, girls, you you need to be careful with what you wear.
Yeah, because you're making all these men stumble.
And think about how disrespectful, how dishonoring it is to a female to tell her, well, be careful with what you wear because it's your fault that he has an issue.
Yeah.
It's your fault that he's lustful. It's all your fault, you nasty, nasty woman. You know, when I was younger, and going to the church that I went to, there was a day I had something on. We weren't allowed to wear pants. And I had some sort of outfit. I don't remember what it was. And the pastor's wife came to me and she said, you need to make sure you don't wear that again and all this stuff. And I said, well, so-and-so wore the same exact outfit pretty much. And she said, well, she's heavier set. Nobody wants to look at that.
Wow.
And I thought, I don't know.
So there was no chubby chasers
I don't
in your
know.
church?
No, I was just thinking like,
you're going to have to edit that out.
I'm not going to edit it out. It's just like,
how does she know what people are attracted to?
Well, it just was like, I don't know if you think that's flattering. But it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're literally, like, if you're going to have a...
Well, from what I remember, what you had told me about this wasn't something revealing. It was just pants and a shirt. Like, this was not...
I think it was a skirt or
showed
something.
No skin.
But, like, I naturally have curves.
Right.
So, like...
I know.
Someone else can wear an outfit and I wear the same outfit. It's going to look very different. But I'm like, just because she's heavier set, then... So, I can't wear it because I think it looks nice. She can think it looks nice, but it's okay for her because nobody's gonna, like, how sexualizing. That was them sexualizing, and that's what I'm saying.
They were sexualizing.
I am so convinced that my entire life I was sexualized by everybody, obviously except my family, by everybody. And when I look at all the insecurities I had when I was a teenager, all the thoughts I had about sex, the way I was treated by my female friends and everything, it's just like, of course I had all this insecurity. Of course I felt left out. Of course I felt alone because I was being judged because of the way I look. And while everyone thinks like it was a good thing, it was a horrible thing for me. Just recently, I had someone who, she wasn't part of the same church, but she was in the culture. She went to another church.
Yeah.
And she told me, well, we were talking about it. And she said, well, I'll tell you that I was the one who looked different in church. Okay, I visually looked different. I was the blonde, light-haired girl. Everyone else looked different for me because of our culture. I don't know. My dad just looks that way. We don't know where we get it from, me and my brother. So she said, well, just for you to know how far your fame went, in my church, we knew about you because there was some beautiful girl at that. I'm not going to say the name of the church. There's a beautiful girl at that church. And she goes, so I didn't even know you, but I knew of you.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, I was intercession leader.
That makes sense. You were hot.
But listen.
I mean, you are hot. Currently.
I was intercession leader. I went evangelizing every Sunday.
Right.
I led worship. I went to seminary. I taught at Sunday school. I wound up being young adult leader. I did all these things. And out of all of those things that I did, what my fame was how I looked. So as you can see, this is why I'm very passionate about this topic, because I just think as a female who has brains in my head, and I love to study. I like to be educated. I like to think. I'm not devaluing looks because I understand you also have taught me, like, you need to put yourself together. You need to do all these things. And I talked about that. Yes. Because people will look at pretty things, whatever. It's not. But I talked about that in the podcast episode I did with Ashley.
Oh, I was talking about the way TikTok.
Yes. Girls with makeup get better views.
Get higher views than women who don't put any makeup on.
And I will say it's the same thing with Christian stuff, with Bible study. A pretty female will get more views than a not so pretty female.
And part of that's the analytics, like they will push it out more.
Right. And it's also because that's what people are engaging with. They'll watch a little bit longer if it's something pretty, so they'll hear. And that's fine. I'm totally okay. I really don't care about that. But on a personal level, I think we have to be careful with sexualizing. And you know what? In today's culture too, the reverse is also happening. So we have females now who are sexualizing men.
Yeah, and if you're from a male perspective, if you're a male and you're sexualizing each woman that you're talking to or each person, maybe you're gay, I don't know. But if you're sexualizing each person that you're talking to, okay, then you are devaluing them.
Yes.
You're not looking beyond their exterior. You're only talking to them because of their exterior. And that's valuing that person, and we need to learn how to walk in relationship with one another and have value for one another.
Right.
And to love one another in the right way.
Right.
And we can't only, if we're a man, we can't only love a woman because she's pretty.
Right.
That's not enough. Jesus didn't say that anywhere.
Right. And even in the Proverbs.
If you look at the leaders of the church, if you look at the evangelical world, even if you look at who gets put up on worship for worship, if you look at who gets promoted in both the corporate world and church world, if you ain't pretty, you ain't getting it.
Right.
And that's an issue. Like, we should value substance.
Right.
You know, unlike you, I have no understanding of what you're talking about. Nobody ever said that really good looking guy. You know what I mean? Didn't hear that anywhere. Okay, about myself. So I have no recollection. I have no whatever. I have no way of understanding what you're talking about there. But I do know that you need to learn how to value people for who they are.
Yes.
Okay? Martin Luther King said the content of their character.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very biblical in a way. Like, because Jesus says that. Mm-hmm. Like, their character matters.
Right.
And so I think that's important to understand. And obviously we know in context, we believe anyways, that Jesus is saying, if you value women properly, or if you're a woman and you value men properly, you will not do these things.
Right.
You won't get caught up in adultery.
So then here, let's just address this where it says, so if your eye, even your good, this is the way NLT says it. So if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out and throw it away. Like, do we really think Jesus wants us to gouge our eyes out? And this is why there's people who, you know, we'll call them the literalists. They take the Bible literally. Mm-hmm. You cannot take the Bible literally. Hebraic thought and teaching is filled with pictures and stories. Jesus is clearly making a statement here. He's being dramatic.
Yeah, and
he's saying, cut it out.
If this was to be taken literally, there wouldn't be a single man on earth with two eyes.
Some would have no eyes.
Most, all of them would have no eyes.
They'd have no eyes.
Because every man is guilty of this at some point in their life.
Right. So
there's no way they'd...
And some females too nowadays with this thing. And it goes for anything. Like, so, you know, obviously this particular passage talks about lust and sex and all that, but there's so many other things that we do or think about. You know, if you were to just throw, you know, are you going to cut your arm off? No. But here is this whole, again, bringing it back to the Gehenna, right? Mm-hmm. It's talking about how just cut it off and throw it into Gehenna, because why? Gehenna, as we talked about last week, is a dumping ground for bodies and trash. And it's death. Where people burn after death, right? Yeah. Like literally.
And it's also the place of the death. So there's also, I see a sin and death thing going on here.
Okay.
Because under the law, when you don't obey the rules, mm-hmm. we know that the consequence for that is death.
Okay.
Okay. And today, even under the new covenant, sinning, when you sin brings death.
Right.
Okay, it's the law of sin and death. And I see this here under the law. Jesus is pointing out that if you continue to walk away from or against what God wants for you and the purpose of your life, you are bringing death upon yourself. So,
right, I was going to ask you, who brings the death? Does God bring the death?
No, it is under the law. That's the way it is.
It is the sin that brings the death.
Yes.
It is the consequence of sin.
Yeah.
So
the byproduct.
I just want to point that out because a lot of people believe that God punishes for our sins. God has no need to punish for sin. Sin does all the punishment.
Right, and sin and death are synonymous oftentimes under the law. So you see,
because it produces death.
It produces death. The wages of sin is death. Right. We have
it's not
that verse
God punishing you for the sin. It is sin's consequence.
Consequence.
Yeah.
And he's warning you that that's where you'll end up. And it'd be better if you cut off one of your members than to have your whole body end up in death, basically, or in Gehenna.
So it's kind of like, if you look at both these examples, it's almost like it's better for you to lose a part of yourself than lose your whole self.
Yes.
So.
And this is Gehenna again. By the way.
So what do you think the takeaway is for that? Like, it's better for you to lose a part of yourself than your whole self. Like, what does that look like practically today, do you think? Like, does that look like giving up something?
Yeah, I mean, you can't just be a product of your lust. You can't just allow your lust to guide your life. And you must be willing to lay that part down. And you have to be willing to take action to do so. It's not something that's easy. I think that's why he puts that strength or that idiom there with the right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. He's like, this is a big deal. Like, you need to make the sacrifices necessary to change. Like, this is important. It's not a small thing. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away.
Don't let it destroy all of you. Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's better to lose one of your members than to have your whole body go into Gehenna again, go into hell. Yeah, I would say that's a big part of it. There's other idioms. Obviously, there's a lot of quotations going on here.
It got me to think about, you know how Paul said we need to die to ourselves daily, and then there's the talk about how we need to die to our flesh. And it kind of makes me think about this is what that means. Like, if you are ogling a woman, desiring her, thinking about her, sexualizing her, you need to cut that out. That is flesh. That is flesh, not your physical body. Flesh is that sinful thing. Cut that off. Cut it off. Because it's better for you to cut that off, even if it wasn't intended for you to be cut off, but just cut it off because it's going to lead you to nowhere good. It's going to wind up destroying your whole body.
Yeah.
So, just trying to think about practically what that means. I think focusing on the sexual part, if you have an issue with pornography, you need to cut it out.
Right.
Cut that out.
Right.
Because what's the point of leaving it in, thinking it's not so bad, it's okay, it's not doing anything wrong, but you kind of know that it is. Why keep that? Cut it out, or else it's going to destroy all of you. You need to be willing to let those things go to prevent your entire being from being compromised.
Yeah, and he's using these very strong illustrations here, where he's painting a picture saying, hey, this will kill you.
Yep.
This will kill you. So whatever it takes
to
eliminate it. This will destroy you. It will lead to adultery. It will lead to sin. It will ultimately lead to death. So cut it out.
Yep.
That's what he's saying. The wages of sin is definitely death.
Death.
And he's laying that out very clearly. To me, like when Paul talks about dying to the flesh, I don't see that correlation. What I see is that one of the mistakes we make as Christians is we think that the way to not struggle with adultery or not have our right eye is to become very rigid. Like, don't look at this, don't look at that, be very careful.
Again, they're taking it literally.
Right. When really what you need to do is look back at the beginning of Matthew. Look, what does it say? Blessed are the pure in heart. Mm-hmm. Blessed are those that seek
righteousness.
Righteousness. Blessed are those that are meek. And when you begin to become a follower of Jesus, and
blessed are those who are pure in heart.
Yeah, you start to love one another. Mm-hmm. And it says, you will be known, you are my disciples. In another part in John, it says, you will be known, you're my disciples by your love one for another. When you begin to bring in all of that into your life, these other things that so easily beset you, they begin to fade away anyways.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Because it's nearly impossible to truly value women in the right way and end up having sex with them and cheat on your wife.
Right.
Very difficult to do. Because now you're going against everything that you believe about a woman. Mm-hmm. Right? So you're never going to get to that point. You're never going to get to that point if you truly value women in the right way. You want to go on to 31?
No, I think we should leave the divorce part for the next episode, just for time's sake, because I feel like that's going to be a pretty extensive topic as well. Okay. What I'll say is the next episode we'll talk about divorce. We're going to talk about what the Sermon on the Mount says about divorce, what Jesus says about divorce. We'll provide you with the context of why Jesus is saying it. We'll look at it from different angles. But we will also talk about divorce in general. We know that this is a topic that's very confusing. We know that divorce in the Christian circles is also very high. The rate of remarriage is also very high. And there is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of judgments, and a lot of condemnation for people who have been divorced. So for this week, in essence, the lesson is check the motive of your heart. Don't sexualize the opposite sex, or, just don't sexualize people in general.
Yeah. Or the same sex.
Yeah. Don't devalue a human by limiting them to their appearance, to what they look like. Everything we do, we must honor one another. Okay, that was a lesson Jesus taught us over and over again. Paul mentions that all the time too. We need to walk in love. We need to honor one another. And in honoring one another, we do not look at another and imagine the things we would do to them. Like, that's just not, if you're not in a relationship, like I will say, like, outside of my relationship, it would be wrong for me to desire or to think or to imagine doing anything. Because if I do, that could potentially lead to adultery.
Yeah.
Because I've imagined it. I've created a world where it's acceptable. That's the lesson here. It's really that simple. I don't think it's anything new and revolutionary.
Yeah, the Jewish people said during that time, if you didn't actually commit adultery, everything else was pretty much allowed. But Jesus is saying, no, we need to get to the point where we don't even desire it. Then adultery will never happen. Yeah. Just like murder. If we're not angry and wanting to kill someone, then we'll never actually get to the point where we kill someone.
It's a precursor, right? Like, the only reason you do commit adultery is because you've imagined it, you've lingered on it, you've thought about it, you've made plans for it, you've thought, how am I going to hide it?
Yep.
And all that stuff. Like, if you're a married man walking around with a condom in your wallet just in case, well, just saying. So, we just have to be careful. All these things, again, goes back to, it's about the heart.
That's right.
I used to look at it as, oh, Jesus is upping the ante. No, he's simply revealing to us where it all begins. Where's the root? The whole reason we don't commit adultery is because it devalues humans.
That's right.
It's violating God's image in your spouse and in the other person that you would potentially be having an affair with. So I guess we'll leave it with that.
It's also walking outside of love. You
100%.
You're not loving one another the way Jesus said that we need to love one another if you're doing that.
So that's it for this episode. We look forward to the next one. We hope that you have enjoyed what you heard. If you enjoyed it, you were encouraged by it, it helped you understand something, you know someone who needs it, one, give us a like. Feel free to comment. Let us know what you took out of this. Did you learn something new? Did it bring up any questions? Do you need clarification on something? Because we can always do a Q&A podcast where we answer any questions that come up until that point. If there's someone you know that they may enjoy this, they need to hear this, maybe this is something that will bless them, definitely share it with them. And if you've been blessed with it, make sure to leave us a review. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. So subscribe to wherever you are listening to the podcast.
There's something we missed. Maybe I'll bring it up next week if you need to edit this out. But it says, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. And then it says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, right? So if you're a man and you realize that you're at risk of losing your eye if you do a specific thing, okay, you're going to do whatever it takes. You will put your whole heart into making sure you don't lose that eye.
Right.
You will put your whole heart. You will do whatever it takes to make sure you do not lose that arm. And you'll put a massive amount of effort into making sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
So part of what Jesus is saying here is this may not be easy for you to do, but you need to do it.
Right.
You need to put a lot of effort into it. And it needs to be, that's the level of importance that this brings. Intention. Yeah. Massive intention with massive ramifications.
Yep.
So that's something that we should, consider as well.
No, that's good. And to that point, I think something that I want to clarify, and I've been meaning to do this, and I just keep forgetting to start off the podcast this way, is to explain why we're covering the Sermon on the Mount in a podcast called Destiny Awaits. Because this podcast is really designed to help you uncover your identity, discover your purpose, and step into the life God has for you. Step into your destiny. And the reason we're going over the Sermon on the Mount and in this detail is because, some would call it a blueprint for life. Jesus really left us these words to teach us how to step into our destiny. This is a sermon that talks about who we are, what our purpose is, and how to live a life in the kingdom of God. That's exactly what this podcast is about. It's about uncovering our identity, discovering our purpose, and stepping into destiny. And the Sermon on the Mount does exactly that. Yeah. So when I read this and was so convicted and moved by this, I just really have been pouring my heart into it to bring you this, because it really fulfills the objective of this podcast. So I initially didn't have intention to have this be a Bible study, but it just has morphed that way. And who better to learn from than Jesus?
That's right.
So we'll have guests on and stuff. And, every once in a while we'll have bonus episodes. The girls want to do a podcast with us as well. So we'll use that as either we'll use that as bonus content, or we're going to start a whole other podcast where it becomes a little bit of a free-for-all and we just talk about anything and everything, which is probably what it'll be called. But yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because when you brought that up, it caused me to think about intention and being intentional. And to live a life of purpose, we must be intentional. To step into our destiny, we must be intentional. It has to be intentional living. And, we always hear intentions don't matter. In my book, The Journey, I have a whole chapter on that because I believe intentions matter.
Yeah, it does. And yeah, the entire scripture is about humanity living their purpose.
Yes.
And your destiny awaits. Your destiny is that. That
Right.
is your destiny. Living your purpose is your destiny.
It is your destiny.
And learning how to do that in the right way, learning what your purpose is, learning what our humanity's, our purpose for the earth. Like, we were made to live this out.
Yes.
And we were designed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do, we're ultimately, for the first time, stepping into and living out the way we were designed.
Right.
Just like a car is designed with 4 wheels and an engine to drive. And when that's why it works so well. But if you take one of the wheels off, it doesn't work very well.
Right.
It doesn't drive very well on 3 wheels because it's designed for 4 wheels. So when we try to live out our lives on this earth outside of our purpose, outside of our destiny, and we try to live that in a different way, we're going to struggle. We're going to have
It's a
problems.
struggle, for sure. And that's why it's so important. Like, the way I see it, destiny is living your best life.
Yeah,
you know, and I want everyone to live their best life. And when I look at the Beatitudes, that's what all the blesseds are. It's a sign of, how do you know you're living your best life? When you're poor in spirit, because that's when you are in the kingdom of God. When you're pure in heart, because that's when you see God. And that's living your best life. Living your best life doesn't mean you have giant amounts of money, a huge house, a wonderful car, fame, luxury, all this stuff. Like, those things are great and they can add to your quality of life. But if you don't have, you have to be living your best life without those things for you to appreciate those things. That's the way I see it.
Yep.
So we want everyone to step into their destiny. And I feel like the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount are a great teaching and stepping stone to get there. So you can step into your destiny right now, today. You don't have to wait. It's literally awaiting you. It's just a matter of, are you choosing to be there or not? And that's what we're hoping to help you with through this podcast and through all the resources that we provide. So go check out andreajohn.com. We have lots of blog episodes. We do have the Sermon on the Mount hub there. So it has a summary of everything. I do post in the Journey Journal all the time. We have a resources tab and on my social media, and I'm connected with so many incredible, smart, amazing people that I just hope that you connect with them when you're out there as well, because, so many people have God things to share. So
Absolutely.
not just us. So that's it for this week, guys. Next week, we'll come to you with the fun topic of divorce.
Perfect.
And then
Can't wait.
And we'll move on from there. So we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.